Good evening and welcome to Senator Andy Kim's Town Hall. Before I get to the Senator, I wanted to let you know that if you're listening in on the phone, you can press *3 at any time during the Town Hall, and you'll be put into a queue to ask a question. If you're listening in online, you can type in your question into the bar below the player, and thank you for joining us online. For a moment, I'd like to introduce my colleague Laura to say a couple words as well. Laura?
Buenas noches y bienvenidos al juntamiento del senador Andy Kim. Mi nombre es Laura y voy a estar en la línea por si tiene alguna pregunta que les gustaría preguntar en español. Tenemos traducción disponible. Antes de que hable el senador, quería informarles que si está escuchando por teléfono, puede presionar estrella 3 en cualquier momento y será agregado en línea para poder hacer una pregunta. Si estás escuchando desde nuestra página de internet, puedes escribir tu pregunta en la barra debajo del reproductor. Muchas gracias a todos por estar con nosotros esta tarde. Ahora mi colega Forrest va a introducir al senador.
Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you everyone again for joining us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Andy Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest. Hi, everyone. This is Andy Kim. Thanks for joining up for this telephone town hall that we're doing. I'm down here at the Capitol. We've been, working around the week, just trying to get as much done as possible. A lot going on that we'll go into, but I really wanted to make sure I have a chance to be able to give you all an update. I found these town halls to be really helpful in the past when I was a member of the House of Representatives. And especially now that I'm representing across the state of New Jersey, about 9.5 million people, trying to find an opportunity and a way to be accessible, to be able to get this information out there. So again, just really grateful for you joining up. Before I jump into some of the different issues that we're dealing with right now in government, I wanted to just give a little bit of background because this might be the first time that a lot of you are hearing from me, and you might not know too much about me. So I just wanted to just start by saying, I'm somebody that grew up down in South Jersey, down in Burlington and Camden counties. I don't come from a political family. In fact, both my parents immigrated to this country about 50 years ago from South Korea. They were born during the Korean War, escaped poverty, and sought to come to the United States to be able to have a better life. So I grew up with my sister down in South Jersey. I'm a public school kid. I grew up through the public school systems of New Jersey. Never thought that I was somebody that would have a place to serve in government, but I was in college when 9/11 happened and decided that I was going to dedicate my life to national security and trying to protect this country. I went off and did my education and then came back into government. I worked at USAID, at the State Department, at the Pentagon. I worked out in Afghanistan as a civilian advisor to the 4-star commanding generals out there, and I worked at the White House National Security Council. I was a career public servant, so I worked under both the Bush administration and the Obama administration. I was a nonpartisan career public servant and very much proud of that work. So I don't come from a political background in that way, but I decided to step up to run for Congress in 2018 to try to help protect health care and address a lot of the issues that I was concerned about. So I've been, I'm a Democrat, but I was elected in a district that voted for President Trump voted for him both in 2016 and 2020. So I'm somebody that has tried to show that there are ways in which we can try to engage with one another, be able to talk with one another, and try to think through, how do we move forward in this country that's so deeply divided. And, I'm a father of a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old now, 2 little boys. And I'll be honest with you, I look at the divisiveness in this country and I worry about what kind of America my kids are grown up in. And that's a big reason why I'm doing the work that I do now. So, I was in the House of Representatives for 6 years, 3 terms, and now really proud to be able to represent the state of New Jersey in the U.S. Senate. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of myself and who I am. And with this work that we're doing, one thing I'll just say is with these town halls, I say the same thing at every single one. I say, whether you voted for me or not, you're my boss, and my job is to serve you, to try to serve you and your family to the best of my ability. And I get it. There's going to be a lot of differences right now. We live, as I said, in very divided times. Yeah, I'm not expecting everyone to agree with every single one of my actions, my votes, but we deserve to have a chance to be able to talk this through and try to have an opportunity to be able to engage and for me to be able to tell you all what's happening because I know your lives are busy, maybe not able to follow, the ins and outs of a lot of the major movements that are happening in our government, but also for me to just hear what's on your mind because so often we find that the work down at the Capitol, it very much can become an echo chamber or just a silo and, just need to make sure that we're trying to focus the work that we're doing on the challenges that people are facing every single day, that it's not just some power struggle between political parties. In fact, it's the sense that we swear an oath to be able to protect and defend the Constitution, to be able to support people across America right now trying to just live the lives, the dignity and decency that they want. So that's just sort of a broad brush of what I wanted to share with you from the outset. And now we can get into some of the issues that we're dealing with. But again, if you want to ask a question and get in line, you can press *3. And if you're listening online, you can type in your name and question at any time, and we'll try to alternate there, in terms of the people and asking those questions on that front. So I want to just start by saying, talking about just what's been happening just over the last week or so, because there's a lot to unpack. President Trump has been signing a slew of executive orders and taking other actions. And I'll be honest with you, from my perspective, I've been very worried about, a lot of the directions there, a lot of efforts that are, really going well beyond, the focus that we should be dealing with, which is, again, trying to help people with affordability, high cost of living, instead, really diving into some of the most divisive issues and, frankly, things that are going to make a lot of people in our state and in our country really vulnerable to some of the damages that are out there. So, this is something that has alarmed me in terms of just the issues that are being thrown out there, the kinds of actions that are happening, but also just the chaos of so much of what has unfolded over the last couple weeks. And just, this past week, we've seen a number of actions that I think have really gotten people's attention. We have received literally hundreds of phone calls every single day, concerns about, for instance, the funding freeze that happened just the other week, where we saw an effort to try to put a freeze on government support across the board, programs that I have, two people here who are leaders of different organizations that would be hurt from some of these types of freezes, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But, these are the types of actions that, again, just have plunged so much of the people that we talk to in the communities that are worried about, what tangibly is going to happen to their lives. We're talking about, seniors when it comes to, that have food insecurity, worried about whether or not they're going to be able to get some of the meals that they need to be able to survive, healthcare issues, and so many other things that are out there. So, that's something that I know many of you have been concerned about, and the way in which it's gone about. We can have legitimate conversations about federal spending. Is it going in the right direction? Are there ways to try to make it more effective, efficient? I was, as I said, a career public servant. I worked in a number of different departments and agencies. I've seen a lot that I think we can be able to make more efficient, to make more effective, to try to address the needs of the American people and cut back on some of the waste, fraud, and abuse and red tape that's out there. But this effort that is just wholesale going after huge swaths of our government, for instance, at USAID. Now, many of you may not know what USAID is. It stands for the U.S. Agency for International Development. It is the part of our government that provides foreign support, foreign assistance to other nations. This is about 0.5% of our government budget, so it's not a major part. as compared to, for instance, the military, which is about 15%. So this is 0.5% of our government budget. And I told you, I worked it. My very first job in government was there, and that was actually during the Bush administration. So Republicans leading this effort, and that's something I hope we keep in mind is that when it comes to our position as a global leader, this has very much been a bipartisan effort to understand that as the most powerful country in the world, a lot of our power and our ability to keep our country safe comes from having multiple different tools. I call it the 3Ds: defense, diplomacy, and development. Now, we often have a better sense about how defense works, our military works. With diplomacy, I think people have a better understanding there of our embassies abroad and the negotiations that happen. But an important tool is also when it comes to our development support. And again, I ask that you not think about it as charity. This is very much a tool that helps us be able to build relationships with other nations, to be able to help us build those diplomatic channels, to try to avoid military conflicts by trying to address some of these underlying issues. And again, this is something that was widely supported by Democrats and Republicans. It's actually the headquarters is in the Ronald Reagan building because Ronald Reagan was a big supporter and said that it's vital to our national interests and national security that we engage in these issues. So look, as I said, there can be very much a legitimate conversation about, are there programs that the agency is doing that shouldn't be continuing or should be deprioritized, or maybe we can address how much of the cost is there. But what we've seen is really something altogether different. It has been really an attack upon just the principle of our foreign policy, which is there to keep us safe, but also just really a demonization of the organization as well as the public servants that work there. And I think that's where I really just felt really concerned about what atmosphere is being created. I mean, just this demonization of public servants, many of them that I've worked alongside before, these are, again, career public servants that work under both Democrats and Republicans that are just trying to do the work of our nation. And it's just, I think this question that we have right now, just, what do we as a country want in terms of governance and be able to move forward and be able to do the work that our nation needs it to do. And certainly from our elected leaders, I think we really need to make sure that we are trying to anchor ourselves in a place here of just showing what leadership means and showing that we're not trying to push, radical agendas. It's about governance and actually being able to serve the people and the functions there in that kind of capacity. So I just wanted to share that because it's not just about USAID, again, an agency that many of you probably don't know too much about. But what we're seeing unfold is going to spread as we're seeing it to other parts of the government. So it's not just USAID. We see that there is a similar type of effort right now when it comes to FEMA and disaster response, when it comes to the Department of Education and the National Institutes of Health, and a lot of other places that are doing important work. And we really can't have a situation where we're seeing dismantling of these institutions just in a matter of days without any type of public discussion about this, especially when these entities, these agencies and departments are codified by federal law, by Congress. It is not a place for the executive branch to be able to dismantle on their own. When it comes to the federal funding freeze, as I mentioned, we saw just a tremendous amount of response from the people, and I'm grateful for all of you who might have called or emailed, because it's important for us to hear, and not just hear your concerns, but hear some of the impacts that can happen when it comes to the funding. So it makes it tangible, because I think, the vast majority of Americans, if you tell them, hey, look, we're trying to cut back on government spending, a lot of people say, oh, that sounds good. But when you actually tell people what some of that funding is for, it can really change the conversation. When you recognize that it's about healthcare, when you recognize that it's about, supporting families that need a little help in some of our tough times. I still believe that we are a nation that can be compassionate in that way and understand that we're part of something bigger than all of us. And there's an interconnectedness. There's a sense of what it is that we can provide with a sense of fairness. And I think that that's very much something that I believe in, and I hope others do as well. To try to help address some of this, I'd like to be able to just bring on our two guests, just to be able to talk through just how these funding freezes, if they continue on, would impact their work, just to give you a little bit of a sense of how this would unfold. So if you don't mind, we have two guests here. Richard Williams, Executive Director of St. Paul's Community Development Corporation, and who's going to be talking then. And then Marilee Gonzalez, President and CEO of Heightened Independence and Progress Center for Independent Living. So, Richard, why don't we start with you, if you don't mind, unmute yourself and be able to just, for a couple minutes, just tell people about the work you do as well as the impact that would be felt, not just for your organization, but for the people that you serve in the community if there was a freeze. Richard, over to you.
Certainly. Thank you so much, and good evening, Senator, and I appreciate the opportunity to join tonight's town hall. As the Senator mentioned, my name is Richard Williams. I serve as the Executive Director of St. Paul's Community Development Corporation, which is a 35-year-old nonprofit operating in Paterson, New Jersey. As an organization, St. Paul's Community Development Corporation, we focus on homelessness, housing assistance, food security, workforce development, and community outreach. Our mission is to serve as an agent of hope for folks in need, partnering across all sectors to provide services that improve the quality of life and encourage greater self-sufficiency for the residents in our community. I also serve as the president and chair of the Paterson Alliance, a membership organization made up of 120 nonprofit and for-profit organizations with a mission to unite both sectors alongside community partners, really to create a vibrant Paterson through collaboration and the building of a community where everyone feels respected, included, and valued. And Senator, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you not only for convening tonight's town hall, but also for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit our food pantry and emergency men's shelter to hear firsthand the impact that any potential pause, freezing, or cutting of federal dollars would have on our programs and services. Senator, as we discussed on your visit, the federal dollars that St. Paul's Community Development Corporation receives to support our food and housing security work are critical aspects of the social safety net in our community. These programs have existed for over 40 years here in Paterson, predating the incorporation of our nonprofit, and have assisted countless individuals and families put food on the table and make the necessary strides to regain control of their lives, their dignity, and the tools that will set them on the path to greater financial self-sufficiency. In my dual roles, both with St. Paul's and the Paterson Alliance, I know all too well the awesome impact that our collective work has had on the folks that we support on a day in and day out basis. In regards to St. Paul specifically, any pauses or cuts to federal dollars that our organization receives could mean the cutting of food assistance to close to 600 families per month who are receiving grocery packages that will provide a week's worth of meals to every individual person in the household, over 2,500 individual beneficiaries every single month. It would also mean the cutting of housing support services to over 80 homeless men a year who not only are being provided with a warm bed off the streets and 3 square meals a day, but also with laundry, and shower facilities, as well as employment and housing assistance. Since the incorporation of our shelter, we have served well over 2,000 homeless men in that program, putting them back on the path to help and support themselves, and in some instances, their families as well. These are just two small examples of the immediate impact that decisions made in our nation's capital would have on the community we serve. But I am but one voice representing hundreds of organizations in our region and across our state who will be harmed by these funding decisions at much greater levels of impact. And Senator, in closing, I just want to again thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and to bring our collective concerns with you back to D.C. Because I know, having had an opportunity to speak and talk with you, that you are fighting on behalf of the individual residents in our community who need us now more than ever. And I really thank and appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for sharing that and really just trying to hit home the tangible impact of these funding freeze, as well as these types of challenges we're going to face, even apart from the funding freeze, of significant cuts that are not thought through and targeted in the way that should be. So I wanted to bring on Marily Gonzalez to be able to talk through some of the work that you do. So Marily, if you don't mind, unmute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work and what would be affected by these types of freezes.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, my name is Marily Gonzalez. I am the CEO and president of Heightened Independence and Progress HIP, a center for independent living serving Bergen and Hudson County. Centers for Independent Living are actually our funding is authorized by the Rehab Act of 1973. Our funding comes from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services under their Administration for Community Living Programs. Here in New Jersey, we service 21 counties. We have 12 centers, and we are nonprofit centers. We all provide the same core services to individuals with disabilities. This last year, for 2024, we provided over 102,000 consumer services across the state. We are in a state where 1 in every 4 adults have disabilities, 1 in every 35 children have disabilities, with autism affecting many of them. The type of work that we do, we provide support services for the community, for people with disabilities. We are here to support them, to empower them. It's important, the work that we do. Many agencies target certain groups. The Centers for Independent Living work with all people with disabilities, regardless of the disability, regardless of the age. We assist individuals from moving from institutions back into the community. We help young people transition to community living as adults. We do information and referral services. We do independent living skills such as personal care, budgeting, household management, and much more. Peer counseling, support, mentoring, advocacy. We assist the youth with job search assistance and training. We do so many things that are so important for the community in New Jersey. It would be we would not be able to maintain our centers if the federal money came to a stop or a freeze. I can tell you that when speaking to some of the other directors across the state, the average center for independent living may be able to maintain operations for about 60 days before completely closing their doors. And that's something that we have to take very seriously. This is a huge impact on New Jersey residents that rely on the valuable services that all the centers throughout the state provide. I think a lot of times what people don't realize is that empowering people with disabilities to live independently not only promotes social inclusion, but also has economic benefits for society as a whole. And centers for independent living are across the entire United States. There's over 350 centers that are funded. When individuals with disabilities have access to resources and opportunities, such as education, employment, accessible housing, healthcare, technology, and transportation, it can significantly reduce the reliance on government assistance programs and enhance the overall quality of individuals. In many cases, people with disabilities face systemic barriers that limit their opportunities for employment and just personal growth. Challenges like living on poverty incomes from SSI or SSDI are compounded by discrimination, lack of accessible workplaces, and insufficient support networks. Without addressing these issues, many are left with limited options, perpetuating cycles of inequality. The Centers for Independent Living across America advocate and work to address these issues by empowering, educating, and supporting people with disabilities and their families. The work that we do is very unique, and it's important for everyone to understand that these programs that are federally funded, they're making everyday living for everyone better. And that's something that I would like for everyone in New Jersey to realize, and everyone in Washington, D.C., that these programs are valuable and are not up to be terminated in any way. But I want to thank you, Senator, for inviting me today.
Yeah, thank you. And just one thing I would just want to emphasize, if you don't mind, I just want to get this back to you. You were saying that if funding was cut, that many of these centers would close within 60 days. So I just want to highlight this because I think some of the conversation that has been happening is saying, oh, this is just a freeze. These aren't permanent cuts at this point. We're evaluating and looking at what the spending is. But it sounds like what you're saying is even if there was like a 2 to 3 month freeze that reviews these different programs, that in and of itself would be disastrous. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very few centers have enough reserve to continue daily operations for 3-6 months. Some centers are a little bigger, like my center, that I could probably keep my doors open for the next 6 months. But some of the smaller centers across New Jersey would absolutely have to close their doors. And I'm saying 60 days, and that's me being very conservative. But the way that, we draw down our funding, that is to pay for bills that we already paid. Therefore, many smaller agencies, centers for independent living, don't have the type of reserve that it takes to let the federal government figure it out. It would be catastrophic for us.
Yeah. Well, that's something I thank you for that, because I really wanted to highlight that for the people listening, is because, again, if you say, oh, look, we're just putting a temporary pause, we're not cutting the things at this point, but, this approach is just going to be not only just chaotic, but just so damaging. And that's why, when I've been engaging with my colleagues in Congress and engaging with the administration, say, hey, look, again, if you want to try to address inefficiencies and challenges that are there and look at prioritization, we can do that. That we go through a budget process every year in Congress, and we have a chance to be able to change that. But to stop what is already in motion, that's where things get so difficult, because, jobs are on the line, services are on the line, and it's just something that can be so disruptive, and for what benefit? And so, that's something that I hope that we can try to address going forward. There have been legal actions taken to be able to put a hold on that funding freeze, but some of these are already still going. For instance, the efforts to freeze the spending when it comes to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Again, it was a bipartisan piece of legislation that's helping to try to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our tunnels. I think every American can understand that we need infrastructure upgrades in our country, including the Gateway Tunnel Project, which is vital for New Jersey in terms of building train lines from New York into New Jersey, between our states, And, with the problems that we faced when it came to, New Jersey Transit, NJ Transit, and the delays last summer, I mean, we certainly need to be able to move forward on these types of actions that are critical. And to put a freeze on that as they have is just going to really set back. As many of you know, in construction projects, when you're underway, to put a hold on it just absolutely can be catastrophic in terms of the ability to get it going. So, I hope that hits home to you, just, some of the challenges that are out there. And with these legal actions, as well as actions we're trying to engage in Congress, trying to highlight and show just how damaging we can be, that is something that we're trying to do. And we're going to move to questions in a second here, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview of some of the different issues that I've been focused in on when it came to, for instance, the committee assignments that I'm on. So a lot of the work that we do in Congress based off of committees that we are engaged on, and I've really tried to make sure that New Jersey has as wide of a coverage as possible. So I am on 5 committees. I specifically chose committees that Senator Booker is not on. So again, the 2 of us can have as wide of a coverage as possible. I am on the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, which, as I said, has oversight over a lot of the infrastructure efforts that we're engaged in, like Amtrak and transit in that kind of direction. When it comes to a lot of the projects I was talking about with Gateway, I'm on the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, and that oversees housing. I mean, the top issue that I've been hearing about is the high cost of housing. And again, that's not all things that we can handle at the federal level. A lot of that is state and local in terms of zoning and other issues, but in terms of trying to address some of those needs and support from a federal level, I'm trying to put myself in a place where I can try to help families across New Jersey in that way. That also oversees public transit, as I said, a lot of problems that we're facing in New Jersey that we need to make sure we're upgrading. I'm also on a committee called HELP. It's Healthcare, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So healthcare issues, childcare issues, education challenges that we're facing, especially with the high cost of education. Also on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs issues. So, issues about immigration, our disaster response. As we've seen huge problems with wildfires out in California, the hurricanes that devastated North Carolina and elsewhere, and certainly in New Jersey, we've seen our fair share of natural disasters. That is something that I want to make sure we're in a better place to address. And I'm on a committee on aging, so issues facing our seniors, healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, long-term care, when it comes to personal finances or the scams that we see, telemarketing and scams that are targeting our seniors. These are the issues that we're trying to address. And the last thing I'll just say before we open it up is, this isn't just about the legislative issues and legislative work, but also just the constituent work. So, making sure that we're being responsive to our veterans that need help navigating the VA for a claim or a benefit, or seniors on Medicare that are having difficulties getting through, or challenges with Social Security, or if you need help with a passport with the State Department. We're trying to make sure we're addressing those needs. So, please, if you have issues or you know people that do, to be able to get in touch with our office. You can find all of our contact information at kim.senate.gov. And that's something that we really try to pride ourselves in, that constituent work. We call it customer service governance, really trying to be responsive to all of you in terms of what it is that we are orienting in terms of having to help you and your family as best of our ability. And as I said, we really try to be professional about that, try to keep the politics out. I think we're all understanding that we're going down a very dangerous path as a country in terms of our level of divisiveness. And, I keep thinking about this one line, this one quote from Martin Luther King. It's actually in his I Have a Dream speech, but it's a line that's not very well known. But he says this line that just stuck with me. He says, "Let us not try to quench our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred." And I just share that with you because I really do believe it, and we've done this in our previous town halls, that we can have disagreements, and I'm sure there'll be disagreements with some of what I said, or some of the things we're trying to do, but we can engage each other with still a sense of respect, a sense that we are, again, part of this nation, that we're part of something bigger than all of us. And I know we can't fix that all over our country, but I hope we can try to set an example in New Jersey for how we can try to do this better. And that's something that I promise you I will try to commit myself to for as long as I'm in this office, and be able to try to serve the people of New Jersey, all of them, regardless of political affiliation or not, to try to be able to address that. So that's my promise to you. So why don't we start off with some questions? Again, press *3 if you're not in the queue and would like to ask a question, and if you're on the phones, or you can type it in online if that's how you're listening in. So Forrest, why don't we just start right in?
Great. Senator, the first question comes from online. It's from Eric. I'm going to paraphrase the question. It's, we need to get all of the Democrats, Republicans, insiders to yank the curtain and expose with proof blatant corruption and giving out of the American government to the wealthy. This means exposing both sides, but the GOP will hurt more than the Dems. There's not really a question there, Senator, but can you just sort of talk broadly about that?
Yeah, let me just kind of talk through that. I mean, I think there needs to be a lot more transparency. I mean, I get that sense from the comment here that yes, like we should have a lot of transparency, and we should be able to give the American people clarity in terms of where resources are going, what actions are happening, and certainly the oversight capacity in Congress is part of that as well. But I think what they're saying in terms of with proof, I think is key, because again, some of the allegations that were made about USAID and other agencies and departments were just not true, and we need to make sure that proof point is out there, and that we're not just just looking at the first thing that's on social media and taking that to be the truth about it. But look, it's not going to be easy, and we know that there's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of challenges that we're facing when it comes to that sense of truth in our nation right now. The person also talked about the blatant corruption. I mean, look, we have our fair share of these problems in New Jersey, for instance. I think it was 84% of people in New Jersey believe that their elected officials are corrupt. We've seen just a history of that, and this is a big reason why I stepped up to run for the seat in the first place. We absolutely need to take on the corruption and stop it. And so, for instance, probably the most popular piece of legislation I've ever introduced in Congress was a piece of legislation that would ban members of Congress, executive branch officials like the president, the vice president, the cabinet, as well as Supreme Court justices and federal judges. It would ban them from owning and trading individual stocks, from being able to sit on boards of outside companies and organizations, and try to make sure that they are focused in on the work of the people. And look, that's not going to solve all of the problems, but I think that we see the need for that type of action, try to restore a sense of integrity and trust from the American people at a time when it's at an all-time low. And so, yes, I again want to make sure that we have the transparency. We are taking on the anti-corruption, but I think that point in the comment really was true. Is that we need to be able to show the proof, be able to show the details there, and try to cut through just the lies that I think are just swirling around, and people don't know what to believe. And that can just be such a dangerous place right now for a democracy this big of 330 million people. So thanks for that comment. And why don't we move on to the next one first?
Sure. Senator, the next comes from Roger from Trenton. This is on the phone. Roger, you are live with Senator Kim.
Thank you, Senator Kim. Thank you for taking time with me. I had two issues, but I think you pretty much helped me with one on the funding. I have some family members that work for VA hospital, and right now they're all up in arms thinking that everybody's going to lose, or a lot of them's going to lose their job, even though they've been there 28 years, 32 years. But I think you've addressed that. My second issue is more for the country. I'm a big supporter of
Mhm.
closing our borders, and I was just curious on what your take is on closing the borders except for legal entry. In other words, we're going to force everybody
Yeah.
that wants to come into the country, come in legally, come in through the legal pathways. And I know there's a lot of controversy on building walls and this, which I support if it's going to, stop all the illegals coming in, if you will. And I just wondered what
Yeah.
your take on that was, on how you felt about closing the borders, building the walls we need
Yeah.
to do so.
Yeah, thanks,
Because I
Roger,
think
for
that's
that question. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And let me just address the first bit first, though, because you're talking about family members that work for the VA or engage in that system. And yes, look, I mean, there are some real concerns, and I'm glad you raised that. Because, for instance, we have, I helped be able to get the funding and secure the funding for a brand new VA health center out in Toms River, New Jersey, out in Ocean County, an area that has a lot of veterans, especially living out there down the shore in these communities, especially around the retirement communities, and, huge challenges that we're facing when it comes to their level of care. And these types of funding freezes are going to really hurt. We're struggling to get, physicians and nurses to these different VA health centers and hospitals and others that are, servicing in different ways. And look, definitely ways we can try to make the VA more effective and efficient, right? Like we know that it needs to get better. There are a lot of brokenness. A lot of the constituent cases we face as an office are dealing with veterans issues. So we got to get better at that, but it doesn't help by just cutting off the funding, putting a freeze on it. So thank you for sharing that. When it comes to the border, I think a lot of us can have that sense of agreement. Like, look, as a sovereign nation should be able to have control over its borders, air, land, and sea. I'm somebody that worked in national security and counterterrorism. But look, I'm also a son of immigrants, married to an immigrant. Like, we want to make sure that we can keep our heritage as a nation of immigrants. So the sense is when I've talked to people across the political spectrum, I think there's an understanding that we want to have an orderly system, and we don't want people to be able to just walk across the border and do so illegally in terms of not going and declaring themselves at the border or being able to go through some of the processes that are out there. So, I certainly recognize that standpoint, but, it's also a sense that part of why we're having this challenge, though, is because we haven't invested in, the efforts to actually make that orderly process, especially even for legal immigration, is, and I think that that's something that we see over and over again. For instance, a lot of concerns about large number of migrants in communities in this country, and certainly some of the challenges that I face in different cities and different towns in terms of being able to try to provide support. And we think through, well, why is it that we have such a large backlog here? And it's in part because we're not funding, for instance, our legal immigration processes, like having immigration judges. We have only 682 federal immigration judges right now. We have 3 million pending cases that have their case, due process to be able to go through. It would take those 600 some judges 10 years just to go through the cases that we have right now, let alone new ones that we have. And that's causing enormous strain and backlog. We should be able to invest. So, yes, we can try to be able to support efforts on border security. I've done that in the past. We've passed bipartisan legislation to be able to address that. But if you're doing that, but you're not funding, the process to be able to go through whether or not someone has a legal claim to be in the United States, to be able to go through that process, that is just going to cause a huge problem. And so, that's what I'm trying to engage on, is to have that systematic approach, real strategic effort to be able to engage and be able to have a more orderly system that can get this back under control. because we've certainly seen what's been happening hasn't been working. And unfortunately, we've seen just a lack of desire for that kind of comprehensive immigration reform in Congress. I'm hopeful that we can engage on some of those, but right now, look, it's just been a mess, and it's just been really sending a lot of fear into our state about these efforts that just have little transparency and a lot of challenge that are facing these communities, the people that are here, and frankly, just things that are sidestepping a lot of the due process and constitutional protections that people have in our nation. So, those are the things we're trying to address. But thanks, Roger, for the question. Forrest, we'll keep going.
Thank you, Senator. The next question comes from online from Terry. Terry asks, what is Congress doing to address the foreign aid freeze? It seems that Congress has given the spending authority to the executive branch, and as someone directly affected by this, he lost his more than 30-year career working to keep America safe. He worries. Can you please address that?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep my answers short here so we can try to get through a couple more questions here. I want to be mindful of people's times as I know it's right around dinner time. But some of this I talked about earlier. I worked at USAID before. I think this is enormously damaging. And it's something that, again, it's not charity. It's about our national security. In terms of what to do next, now, I've engaged with a number of people that are currently working at USAID, people who are worried that they're about to lose their jobs, the programs that are being cut off. And so there is legal action being put forward by current USAID employees, as well as partner organizations that are just seeing their funding cut off. I mean, this is funding even for projects that are already completed, and these organizations are seeking the reimbursement that they've been promised. And again, that's about America keeping its word, about being able to say, hey, look, you completed a project on behalf of the United States government, we're gonna own up to the contract, and not doing that is just, again, I just find to be chaotic and just not the kind of governance that the richest, most powerful country in the world should be engaged in. Meanwhile, we are in Congress and having conversations with the other senators, for instance, on legislative efforts that we can do to try to compel the executive branch to be able to move forward here. Because again, USAID, for instance, was codified by Congress. It is by legal federal law there, and when they basically got it and dismantled it from an organization of about 10,000 people down to about 600, we know that a lot of the efforts that were underway are just not going to happen. And that this is not some reorganization or restructuring or reforms. It is a dismantling. And that's something that the executive branch does not have the legal capacity to be able to do on its own. It needs to go through Congress. So that's what we're pushing back on as well. So thanks so much for that question.
Thank you, Senator. The next question comes from the phones from Tara from Edison. Tara, I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, but you're on with Senator Kim.
Thank you. I am an immigrant, a DEI hire, I suppose, but most importantly, I'm the mother of an adult with autism, so I appreciate all the points that Ms. Gonzalez pointed out, and I won't repeat them. I'm going to emphasize security as far as Medicaid is very important to our families. I actually just had surgery today, and it really brings home how important it is that my son's care in the future will be guaranteed. But the other point I wanted to make was I also have an amazing daughter who's a postdoctoral candidate in neuroscience, and she's been working for many years now on the developing brain, and she put in a whole lot of effort to submit an NIH grant proposal in December, and now apparently those are all in the trash. There's no guarantee that anybody will ever read them. I've heard that a lot of money is being cut out of NIH altogether. So related to the enormous costs required to keep our developmentally disabled citizens secure, it's foolish in the sense that a lot of this research, it's not silly, glamorous kind of research. These are things which have the potential not only for her own benefit, but to potentially improve outcomes for a lot of our family members. And it's the amount that NIH spends has the potential to save a lot of money in future care and services for people with all kinds of disabilities. And I thank you for hosting this tonight.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, and you must be very proud of your kids' accomplishments on that front. But it's so frustrating to hear what you just said. And look, I say that in someone, my father was somebody who was a medical researcher, tried to cure cancer and Alzheimer's, and received some federal funding to be able to do that type of work, and that's important. That's the kind of investment that can help us have the breakthroughs needed to be able to cure diseases and help address some of the fundamental health problems that are out there. And you're right. I mean, when we see these huge cuts at NIH, again, just overnight, and didn't go through a process in Congress that allows us to be able to listen to different organizations, these different experts about, what would be the implications of these cuts and other things. Like, that's why we have a deliberative process to go through this and try to understand this, and not just do things and shoot from the hip in the middle of the night and cut off fundings in this kind of way that has really no look at what the consequences would be. That's what I very much oppose. And I think what you said about Medicaid as well, it's absolutely critical that we continue to support. And I'll be honest with you, not just when it comes to the funding freezes, but when it comes to some of what I fear is going to be on the table later on this year is very much going to be a tax cut for the wealthiest Americans and the biggest corporations. And how they're going to be able to pay for that is by cutting into Medicare and Medicaid and the health care of so many Americans. And so thank you for sharing your story, because it helps reinforce to me the importance that we stand up to be able to provide the kind of care for everybody, not just the rich and the well-connected. We should make sure that we have that sense of care for the rest of us. Thanks for that. Forrest, why don't we just try to plow through a couple more here before and if folks need to drop off, I totally get that, but I'd like to just get a couple more in.
Sure. This next one comes from Santiago from Vineland. Santiago, you are on with the senator.
Hi, Senator Andy Kim.
Yeah, hi, Santiago.
And I am a very concerned citizen. I've seen what's going on in this country. I follow politics. I follow politics on a daily. I don't like the way the Democratic Party has been behaving on the floor, doing confirmations, appealing to the Republicans when they're trampling our government. But I do have a big question. Why aren't we talking about Elon Musk and the 5 or 6 that partake in the invasion of the federal treasury and exposing everyone's privacy, their Social Security, your Social Security, everyone's Social Security, everyone's information, and these people who hacked our federal treasury, they did it illegally, and could be given to foreign actors or foreign enemies? And why isn't the floor talking about treason, which is what they've been doing in this country right now? This act is a treasonous act, and it's a serious act. It's not just locking them up in jail. And this is why it's pushing me to run for politics. It's pushing me to run not on the congressional level, but in an executive level. And if I do it, I want it to be known that it's that I want to be funded by billionaires. So George Soros, if I end up getting elected, because I want to really get
Hi, Santiago. I think you're kind of cutting in and out.
Okay, because this. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
now?
hi, Santiago. You're kind of cutting in and out. So, if you don't mind, can I respond to what you've said through so far? Because I think what you raised here, and I'm trying to get to another question or two afterwards. But what I'll just say here is, you're absolutely right to raise concerns about what Elon Musk is doing. We have next to no transparency in terms of who's working with him, what access they're getting. I get random messages from different federal employees at different departments saying that that some people showed up today and demanded to be able to see the different work that we're doing, including classified information. We don't know if they have proper clearances in that kind of way. And look, President Trump just said publicly he wanted Elon Musk to be able to go into the Pentagon, for instance. I mean, Elon Musk he's currently a government contractor. He gets billions of dollars in federal dollars from the Department of Defense, from the military, especially when it comes to his SpaceX program. Like, how can we have a government contractor who competes for contracts then is also having access to the entirety of our data and the work that we have in our country and throughout multiple departments and agencies, including the Treasury payments? While he is also a political actor, while he is, threatening members of Congress of funding their primary campaigns against them, having the largest super PAC ever in American history, it's just the conflicts of interest are just overwhelming. Meanwhile, he's not filing financial disclosures. He's not abiding by Hatch Act, which is trying to depoliticize our federal workers. And so, yes, this is something where the legal actions have been able to pause, especially when it comes to the Treasury payment system, which is very, very sensitive. And we're trying to follow up in that sense. But the court order said for him and his team to stop and to delete the data that they have so far, and that enforcement is underway at this point. But there's a broader effort, and I'm glad you raised it because I think it's important that people understand that to have someone have this much access, especially someone who's not elected, as well as somebody who is, again, a contractor with the U.S. government. That is something that I think many people have a challenges with. So, Forrest, why don't we see if we can sneak in another question or two here?
All right, the last question, and then we are about to pass time, is from Emily from online, from Cherry Hill. Emily asks, what are the senator's plans with the Department of Education? She's an education major and is interested in the senator's plans to protect students and teachers if the department goes away.
Yeah, I mean, as we were just saying, what happened to USAID is just the beginning. And, I actually sat down with the nominee for Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, and I asked her, I said, is what's happening at USAID something that you're going to do to the Department of Education? And she did confirm she expects that they're going to do major cuts to personnel as well as reassignments to other departments and agencies. And I think immediately, we're seeing already, just the preparations of legal actions again to try to stop that. But we're going to see as well, with the majorities in the House and the Senate from the Republican side, they're going to try to go through the budget process as well and try to gut that. So there is going to be a lot of problems on that front. And what we're trying to do is certainly try to block that effort in terms of the congressional action blocking it when it comes to the budget process, and try to use the tools that we have to try to address that, which will be difficult, but we'll certainly press hard, and that's something I'm feeling more and more urgency with. And when we just see just the illegal actions that are happening across the board, the lawlessness, and I think that that's key. But also, look, one that I've been doing is I've been meeting with a lot of educators across New Jersey, a lot of school administrators. I'm just trying to make sure we're able to tell the story of what would happen. If we see the kind of cuts that we're expecting, or seeing some of the services that are not able to continue on when it comes to this. And, New Jersey, we certainly try to pride ourselves in our school systems, investing in our kids, but that also invests in our workforce. It helps our economy, helps us be able to, build up our economic strength as a nation. Isn't that what we want to do? So, I just think that this is, just a scary time when it comes to this. Certainly, we're trying to offset some of these challenges by, continuing to invest at the state level, but, we're very much in a big fight to be able to take this on. But, when I hear that, things like, efforts that they might have to try to deprioritize a program called like IDEA funding, which is, about helping students with disabilities be able to get the kind of care that they need, the kind of support that they need. Like, that should be something that all of us can agree upon. And that's something that I'm going to certainly fight hard to be able to protect. So thank you for this question here, and make sure that we are working together to be able to try to stop these types of cuts and these types of attacks upon our education. So thanks for that. And look, I know there's some more questions that are there. If you haven't had a chance to be able to ask, right after this, right when it ends, you'll have a chance to be able to leave a message, and my team can record down your question, and we'll be able to get back to you. And I'll also just continue to have these. I hope it's useful. If so, provide us with some of that feedback. We're trying to make sure that we can do this in a way that it could be helpful for you to hear from me, but also for me to hear from you, and do so in an accessible way, as we're trying to make sure we can try to reach, people all across the state, and be able to, have this be done in an accessible way, so it's not too much of an inconvenience to you all. So I just want to say thanks again to my guests, as well as thank you to the people of New Jersey who listened in. Please, we're going to stay in touch. We're going to continue to work hard. Things are changing every single day. Please reach out to my office if you have any additional questions or comments, and we'll make sure that we try to get back as soon as possible. So I wish you all the best. Please take care, and wish you and your families, all the best in this coming week as we see what unfolds. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.